Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the movie Abigail that just recently came out in theaters, and I loved it. I think that this might be one of my favorite movies that has come out this year. Let's talk about it.
Modern movie review.
Okay, so as with any movie like this, I am going to go ahead and issue a spoiler warning. It is currently out in theaters. If you think that having this movie spoiled to you might potentially ruin your viewing experience, and you definitely are going to go see it, you might want to hold off on watching this video. But that being said, I am going to start off by saying some non-spoiler things first, so you can stick around for a bit for that part. But that being said, I will give you a further spoiler warning later. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do before I dive too far into this video is I want to address the fact that I think that this movie is one of the best movies I've seen this year. I think that it's one of the most fun theater experiences I've had in a really long time, and I really enjoyed this movie, but I might have some personal biases that really make this movie even better for me than it potentially would be for the average person who's going out to see this movie. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of address my personal biases towards why I think this movie is so good, and then when I do my full review, you'll kind of understand why there are some moments that aren't that great that I'm still like, hell yeah, that works for me. So some of my big personal biases, for one of my favorite movies that has came out so far this year is the movie Lisa Frankenstein, and part of the reason for that is Kathryn Newton is just so fun. I think that in any movie that you put her in, she's just absolutely going to steal the show at some point or another, and she is just so good at playing these eccentric little characters, and whenever some stuff happened later in the movie with her character specifically, and she's doing really weird things, I think that it just works so well. So I'm a really big fan of that. And then on top of that, I'm also a huge fan of Dan Stevens. I think that anything that he's in, he can never go wrong with anything. He was just in the Godzilla X Kong movie, and I think that he was the best part of that. And I definitely think that he would be arguably the best part of this movie if it wasn't for the fact that this cast is just insanely stacked. Because Melissa Barrera is also in this movie and absolutely kills it, and I absolutely love her and everything. She's killed it in the last two Scream movies. It's a damn shame that they decided to go a different direction with the next Scream movie, and I personally feel like they shouldn't even bother making it if she's not going to be in it, because she proves in this movie that she is a Scream queen and somebody who absolutely does amazing in the horror genre. And then this is also Angus Cloud's last ever acting performance, and Gone Too Soon. He's incredibly talented in this. He does a really great portrayal, and I think that his character is also just somebody who some people will definitely be able to resonate with. He's very fun, he's very charming, and I really love his entire sense of humor in this movie. And I really love these kind of horror thriller movies that are coming out right now. So for me personally, I think that slashers might be my new favorite genre. And this one's weird because it's kind of it has vampires and stuff like that. Some people might be like, is this really a slasher? I feel like this movie definitely is classified, or should be classified, as a slasher horror film, and that's my favorite genre right now. So like I said, this movie is definitely 100% for me. I'm going to like this movie no matter some of the weird swings that they take, some of the things that a lot of people online have been complaining about. They all, for the most part, worked for me. So that being said, those are all my personal biases. We're going to now dive further into the movie, and I do want to go ahead and issue a spoiler warning here because I'm talking about a movie that I really liked. There's a chance that I will slip up and spoil some really major scenes. So that being said, let's dive into this. Okay, so right off the bat, I kind of want to give a little breakdown of this movie because I think that, for the most part, people who are going to see this movie, part of the reason why some of them are not liking it is because they don't know really what they're going into. So I'm kind of going to break down the 3 acts of this movie and explain what kind of person or fan you should be for each individual act, because I think that the first act, the second act, and the third act are very distinct, and they all have these different moments that feel very different and out there. So for one, the beginning of the movie, the first act of this movie kind of reminded me of the movie Baby Driver a little bit. It's basically, these guys are a bunch of crime lords. They're going and they're kidnapping this girl, and it really does kind of feel like just people who live in a criminal underworld having to take on a mission where they're working together with a bunch of random criminals who they've never met before. And there's a lot of really fun heist tropes that happen in the first 20 minutes. I think the first 15 minutes of this film feels like a full-on heist movie, and I really enjoy the entire team dynamic of oh, there's the hacker, there's the getaway driver, there's a sniper, there's the muscles, there's this, there's that. And I think that it does the little heist at the beginning of the movie incredibly well, and it is ridiculously fun to watch, and I really enjoy that. And for the most part, I think that it does a really good job of kind of introducing the characters in this first act of the movie, and that's something I'm going to touch on a little bit more later. But the first act of this movie, I feel like it could best really be described as like, you know, those reality TV shows where they're like, let's just get a bunch of hot people into this one house, and like they're not allowed to, you know, make out or have sex or do this or do whatever. It kind of feels similar to that in the sense of like there's just these 6 people who don't know each other. They're all ridiculously hot. Some of them are like, oh my god, let's just say fuck it and have a really good time. Some of them that are a little more serious and are like, we have to get this prize money, guys. We can't do anything. And I think that it does a really good job of setting up the character archetypes really early on in the movie. And like I said, I'm going to dive into the exposition stuff later because I think that that's something I will praise that I don't think a lot of other people on the internet have to praise. But like, they do such a good job with, in like 2 or 3 scenes, getting us to a point where we have a great idea of who each of the characters are. But that's the first act. The second act, I think, is what everybody who is expecting this movie to be. This is what they're looking for this movie. It's a fun slasher movie. We get to witness a lot of really cool, gory death scenes. We get to see a team full of like ragtag people who do not have anything in common, trying to work together as a team to defeat the threat that is Abigail. And some of the moments where they are like figuring out, okay, she's a vampire. Okay, how do we defeat a vampire? And like them trying to solve the mystery of like how the hell to get out of this house. It kind of feels like an escape room movie in a sense for a lot of the portion of the movie, because Melissa Barrera's character is very against them killing Abigail. So for the most part, they're actually just trying to find a way out before the vampire gets to them, which I think is really cool. And that entire like middle, like from like 30 minutes into the movie to the last like hour, 20 minutes or something like that, fantastic. Really, really great thriller stuff. Really, really great horror sequences. I absolutely love everything about it. They have some interesting musical choices, and I think that making the vampire, making Abigail a ballerina, is such an interesting touch, and it really makes this movie for me, because there's a lot of sequences where like the vampire could just be going around and killing people, but she's doing like these cool little ballet dance moves and stuff like that before killing people, and it's so interesting, and I love the way that they do that. And then the final act of this movie, the last like 30 minutes, this is where it's going to lose a lot of people. They kind of introduce the concept that the regular people who we've been following this entire time can also be turned into vampires, and I feel like the first character they do it with, it works really well. It's really interesting. It's a fun, slow turn. And whenever she becomes a vampire and she starts doing vampire stuff, it's fun. It's awesome. It's really epic. I love the stuff that they do with it. And then they just kind of like start turning everybody into vampires. We figure out that Giancarlo Esposito's character from the beginning of the movie was a vampire. One of the remaining survivors turns into a vampire and tries to kill everybody else. And it's really hectic, it's really chaotic, it's really all over the place, and then we see like a bunch of fight sequences that, like, for the most part, this movie was feeling like it could have happened in a real world, but now after these fight sequences, it's like, that's definitely not it. These people are being thrown around and they're surviving things that no human being would ever survive ever, and it makes it lose its sense of realism a little bit, which for the most part, I was like, a little bit like, okay, how are they going to end it? Like, this needs to end soon, because if it doesn't end soon, it's going to be a problem. But, yeah, that third act kind of drags a little bit. And then, after we finally get to a point where, like, the main character who's surviving is, like, about to leave and they're finally off the hook, a random character comes in who I feel like if you cut that entire scene, it would have been fine. And he did not need to show up at all. And I feel like it just adds another layer of, oh god, here we go again. And I feel like instead of it being like a really cool reveal like they are probably trying to be, it felt more like, okay, why is this still going? And they resolve it pretty quickly. But like, it's so weird. And then on top of that, the only reason why I think it works, they play it off as a joke. And the character who's there is also like, what the fuck just happened? Which I thought was great. But yeah. That's kind of like the 3-act structure, everything that happens in the movie. I'm going to dive into why I think this movie was so good now. Okay, so for the most part, I try to be like really spoiler-free here. I'm going to dive really deep into spoilers now. So if you are watching it to this point and you haven't seen the movie, I would really advise clicking off and watching this video later, but that being said, I appreciate you for sticking around this long. Now to dive really deep into things, I want to go ahead and praise the introductions to the characters, because that was something that I thought was really interesting, and the way that they did it was really well done. But they start off, like I said, with it kind of being a heist. They steal the girl, they get her to this house. They get their little introduction of like, okay, you guys have 24 hours. Somebody is potentially going to be coming to steal the girl. You just need to make sure that she's, okay. And it basically sets up the plot that they're just going to be babysitting this girl for the next 24 hours. And then we get a lot of scenes where they're like, just kind of like hanging out in the house. They found out there's an open bar, so a lot of them are drinking and just kind of like playing games. Angus Cloud's character is, smoking, and they're all just trying to have like a good time, get to know each other. They're like, we're gonna be here for 24 hours, we should get to know each other, whatever. And they're having this scene in the kitchen, and a lot of them are, like I said, very fun-spirited, except for Dan Stevens' character and Melissa Barrera's character. Dan Stevens' character is very like serious. We need to get the job done, and like it really is important that we stay alert just in case. And then Melissa Barrera's character is kind of similar on the same vein, but she's also like, she's the one who's supposed to be the caretaker for Abigail, so she's the one who's going in and checking in, and she just wants to make sure that nobody is fucking everything up. So they're all sitting around the party, drinking, having a good time, but Melissa Barrera's character is just sitting there, not having a drink, not, joining in on their smoke session, whatever. And they're kind of like, hey, you're a party pooper, what is wrong with you? And then she makes fun of Angus Cloud's character, and it's just like, you are so much of an open book. You are definitely going to give away exactly who you are, because one of the big things is they're not supposed to say who they actually are or like what their business is, and they're not supposed to get personal. And this sequence turns into Melissa Barrera just explaining exactly who Angus Cloud's character is, and him being like, well, I'm actually really good at reading people, and he tries explaining who everybody is, and he gets them all wrong. And then Melissa Barrera is able to kind of step up and explain basically the character archetypes for each individual characters. And some people will see this as like, this is lazy writing, they're just telling us who everybody is. But the way that she does it is just so sassy, so confident. She's basically like kind of making fun of the people for some of their life decisions and stuff like that. And it's so charismatic and so fun, and all of the characters, except for like the people who are like kind of having their shoes stepped on a little bit here with some of the insulting stuff, they're all enjoying it. They're like, oh my god, she's getting it absolutely right. Yeah, I am just a muscle, and I am somebody who was bullied as a kid and was beat by my father and stuff like that. And it's like, they're all just having a great time being introduced, and I think that it's just a fun way to quickly introduce a bunch of characters without it feeling forced. And I really, really like it, how we kind of had a general idea of what was going on with each of these characters early on, because something that sucks about a lot of slasher movies and horror movies like this is all of the characters are going to die, and it's harder to gain a connection to some of the characters when you only have, like Angus Cloud's character only had about like 10-15 minutes of screen time. So you need two things. You need an actor who can play the character well, and you need some form of like exposition dump type thing so that you have a general idea of what this character is and why you should like them. And I think that we got that with each of these characters. But yeah, so overall, I think that the way that they introduced the characters was so splendid. I really loved that, and I thought that was great. And now I just want to talk about why this movie was such a good time. So, for people who are a big fan of slasher movies and a big fan of like vampire horror films, there is a lot to love. This is a really great movie where we're going around and we're watching people get like mortified. We're watching people get like, if you're into gore, this is a great one for you, because there's a lot of like explosions. There's a lot of like people getting their heads chopped off. There's a lot of people, having their faces eaten off by a vampire and stuff like that. There's a lot of very like interesting stuff. And for the first time in a long time, I watched a horror movie, and it actually somewhat gave me nightmares, which I thought was really interesting, because I left this movie thinking that this was just a really fun movie. It was absolutely hilarious, and it was like almost cartoonish in a way. But there was one specific scene that really stuck with me. At one point, the entire group is split up, and they're all looking for Abigail, or they're looking for like a power cord or something. I don't remember exactly what MacGuffin thing that they're looking for at the time being is, but Kathryn Newton's character ends up stumbling upon and falling into a pool that is filled with dead bodies. And oh my god, that scene is very dark. It is very like, I'm not going to say it's like really, it's really disturbing, and it really kind of will make your stomach turn a little bit. And I think it's interesting. This is the second movie I've seen this month that has a scene where a character who's very inexperienced and isn't used to this kind of like fucked up life that they're currently, stuck in, and they end up falling into a pit or some kind of pool of dead bodies and then having to like crawl their way out across the corpses. And I'm like, why does this keep happening? This is the second time I've seen it. And yeah, it was a little uneasy. Like I did not feel very great about that, but that is great. For horror movies, you want to have scenes like that where it's like a little harder to watch and it kind of turns your stomach a little bit. It gives you a lot more like, I don't want to say anxiety because that's not the right word, but it definitely like ups the ante for you. Like, oh my God, anything could happen now. And I thought that was great. I think that the young actress who plays Abigail is absolutely fantastic. And she does so well in this. And a lot of the like murder sequences and the scenes where she's attacking them and she's like doing her fun little ballerina dances and everything like that. It's fun. It's ridiculous. It's over the top. And I really, really like that. And yeah, overall, this movie is also just insanely funny. I think that all of the characters we get introduced to are really funny in their own ways. And I definitely don't feel like it's like, sometimes in filmmaking, they'll be like, well, you're cheating because you're having like all of the characters are likable characters. We have characters here that are like easy to hate. It's just the actors play them really well in a way that you're kind of like, okay, I kind of want to see this person survive. Because Dan Stevens' character is definitely not one that I would say is written to be a likable character. He's just one that is portrayed so well by Dan Stevens that like it works and it's great. And he like really balances out the group very well. And I think that that's something that this movie is also not going to get a lot of credit for that it deserves. The casting for this movie is absolutely incredible. I think that every single character involved and every single actor involved absolutely perfectly portray the character that they're playing and really sells this movie on these characters are in this life or death situation. Here's what they would do. And it makes sense and everything works. But yeah. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and kind of like leave this review here. I'm going to go ahead and give my final rating for this movie. And some of you guys are going to think that I'm ridiculous, but I think that this movie is a solid 90 out of 100. Like I said, there's a couple of stuff that happens at the end that feels a little unnecessary and kind of feels like, okay, we didn't really need this. It drags on a little bit. But that being said, I think that it works incredibly well. We have a whole fun character set. We have the lone survivor, which I think is always a fun trope in horror movies when there's only one person that survives. And it does some twists that I will say, I think it's bold. And I like the fact that it really went for it with this movie. So overall, I had a really good time with this. And now it's time for the Letterboxd section. Oh yeah, that's right, the Letterboxd section. First one pretty much speaks for itself. Melissa Barrera, Covered in Blood, is my favorite genre. The second one, We as Humanity Deserve, a horror movie starring Melissa Barrera, Samara Weaving, and Kathryn Newton. I love that. I think that Melissa Barrera and Kathryn Newton's energy in this movie were so well together, and they bounced off of each other incredibly well. And Samara Weaving would be a fun person to throw into this little... Oh my God, this one was so funny to me. 7-foot muscular Elon Musk has great comedic delivery. This one was really funny to me because when I saw these trailers, I literally kept thinking that one guy looked a lot like a muscular Elon Musk. And when I was just telling my sister what movie I was watching, I explained to her it's the movie with Kathryn Newton and the muscular Elon Musk. And she was like, what the? And then this last one, once again, pretty self-explanatory. Kathryn Newton is the queen of horror. Like I said, Lisa Frankenstein and this movie are two of my favorite movies that have come out this year, and I 100% think that it's because Kathryn Newton is just so great in these roles. And yeah, but that being said, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow. Bow, bow.
Back at it again, but that's a relevant flow. So smooth, they calling me Mr. Elegant. Like an elephant, I got a long nose. Like a president, I've got a few hoes. Swift with a stutter, I'm smooth like butter. Don't see it coming when I slip undercover. Like a big dog, but I don't bite. I'm still a big broad, I'd win that fight. Come match you and I knock out your lights.